Good morning and welcome to today's edition of A Coffee With. Today we are delighted to welcome Signe Kongebro, Global Director for Future Cities at Rambøll. Our conversation takes actually place at a very important moment for Europe. Economic competitiveness is under pressure, climate risks are accelerating, geopolitical dynamics are shifting. What is striking, however, is that while these challenges affect entire regions, from rural areas to industrial clusters, they tend to converge and become most visible and also actionable in our cities. Cities are not only where most economic value is being created, where talent, innovation concentrate, and where the green transition will ultimately succeed or fail. They are also the node that connect wider regions, including rural and industrial ecosystems, and increasingly become the decisive factor for Europe's future resilience and prosperity. And this is exactly where the Copenhagen Way comes in, a joint initiative by Rambøll, Urban Partners and BLOXHUB, developed together with a broad ecosystem of stakeholders. The study puts forward a powerful proposition. Cities are not a cost factor, they are critical infrastructure for Europe's future. At the same time, Copenhagen is not presented as a blueprint, but rather a proof of concept, demonstrating how long-term vision, governance, and collaboration can drive transformation at scale. This leads us to our central question today. How can cities actually become drivers of competitiveness, sustainability, and attract investment? What can we actually learn from the Copenhagen experience in a broader European and particular in a German-Danish context? Rambøll has been shaping sustainable cities for decades. What stands out is Rambøll's ability to operate at the intersection of technical excellence, system thinking, and long-term societal value creation. Signe, you are at the forefront of this work. Good morning. As a Global Director of Future Cities at Rambøll, you are deeply involved in translating sustainability into real, scalable urban solutions, and you have been one of the key driving forces behind this wonderful study here, the Copenhagen Way. You are not only analyzing how cities transform, you are actively shaping the transformation. It's a pleasure having you with us today and speaking on the Copenhagen Way. So why are cities so central to Europe's future at this peculiar moment?
Thank you for inviting me for this conversation. I'm pleased to elaborate on exactly this topic of why cities are crucial to Europe's future. More than 50% of the GDP in Europe is embedded in the urban areas. And I think we have to look at that resilience is not a cost. It is actually something that drives prosperity for Europe. So for me, it is, we have to look at the cities as a whole, with all the layered problems, with everything from the deep knowledge underneath that drives the systemic change of the city, but also on top of the surface, all the livability, all the prosperity related to how you want to live your life.
Yeah. What is actually at stake if we do not succeed in transforming our cities successfully?
I would say we lose a lot of value. Not only sort of value in terms of money, but also, of course, in terms of culture, identity, belonging, and how we see the urban realm as sort of a habitat, the best way for many Europeans to live and to create a valuable life. So that's also why it is important that we take care of the city as a whole. And this is also why we claim that cities are critical infrastructure. It is not only about data and energy, like the different assets. Yeah. It's actually all the levels and together that creates the sort of the holistic system that we need to take care of.
Yeah, and today we are not only talking about cities, but we are talking about Copenhagen. Yeah. And the Copenhagen Way as a proof of concept, potentially. What exactly defines the Copenhagen Way? How would you put this forward?
I think what has been very interesting, doing this project, Jesse and I, we sat down and we said, did we actually ask ourselves that question? What did take place in Copenhagen? I'm born and raised here, and I never asked, I'm an architect, and why did I never actually ask myself that question? What levers were actually crucial in order to do this transformation? I was here in the 80s when, the city was super bad, polluted, you couldn't drive on any bike lanes. You could get a flat quite easily though, but it was not an attractive city. And over and over and over, during the years, the city has transformed. And I think so the end result would, in short, put it in short, would be, the most hopeful thing that we learned from this sort of case study is that systemic change is possible within a generation. So that should be the inspiration going out to all cities in a way, that you can actually do this transformation within a generation and profoundly change the city, not only in sort of the look and feel, but also in prosperity.
Yeah. And that's interesting to note, because if we look at Copenhagen today, we look at all these rankings where Copenhagen subsequently is top or amongst the top 3 or 5 at least, most livable city and so forth. There's a lot of rankings we could refer to. It seems as if it has always been the case. If it is natural that Copenhagen is there, but it wasn't. So what actually happened in Copenhagen during that generational span you referred to that transformed the city? Was it individual flagship project? Was it ways of collaborating together? What did actually take place to transform Copenhagen so successfully?
I would say, as any good story, it starts with love. So there was sort of a love affair between the Conservative National Party in the government doing a conversation with the Social Democratic Lord Mayor, talking about, what investment should we do in Copenhagen in order to sort of, transform the city. And that pragmatism sort of, I would say it became like a co-responsibility of driving the capital in the right way. And after that love affair, it was sort of a series of 6 different levers that we have identified that was crucial in actually changing this sort of governance of the city, but also the design, the hidden design of the city. So it goes from, creating an agency like By and Havn, the city and harbor, that could actually do the land value capture of the land in Copenhagen, but also, on the other hand, long-term planning.
Yeah.
Cleaning up the harbor was a very big infrastructural lever. And Rambøll was sort of the key partner for that. I didn't know that as an architect. I sort of just looked at all the harbor baths and bicycle lanes and looked, okay, but that is livability. But actually doing that sort of big investment in the sewage system and the cleaning up sort of that 12-kilometer long blue corridor, flipping that from a backside, industrial backside, into a front stage of the city. That was one of the biggest ones, I would say. And of course, the metro. So these sort of bigger infrastructural things that sort of became the backbone of the city has also led to new areas and new neighborhoods being developed.
But on the basis of collaboration as a key to transforming the city. You spoke about the 6 levers, and you spoke about creating an agency like By and Havn. What shortly are the other levers the report is referring to?
It is, you could say, it is on driving culture. You could say culture. We were in '96 elected as European Cultural City, as many cities has been and will be in the future. But it was sort of at that time, culture was something happening, in the opera, in the Schauspielhaus, in the classical cathedrals of the city. But suddenly, actually understanding that culture was an asset, and we gave loose of that, and somehow used the streets, the parks, creating events, attracting the citizens, and actually made the citizens participants in order to create a sort of not only culture within the buildings, but actually, becoming a platform of all kind of interventions with the different stakeholders of the city. So that would be also a key lever.
One element, yeah. And if we look at Copenhagen and Copenhagen succeeding, did Copenhagen succeed because of the unique local conditions, or because of the model, or in how far is the Copenhagen experience transferable, for instance, to German cities?
Yeah, and that's a very good question. So we will do a lot of discussions with urban cities with cities in Germany. Within a month's time and in the fall. But prior to that, we have been in Stockholm and Helsinki and Oslo, asking that question to test, is that actually possible to learn from Copenhagen in other cities, nearby neighbors? And it seems to me that when they are looking at us, they say, how can you build a metro within 12 years' time? I mean, that's fantastic. We can't even get, building permit for one little specific area due to a lot of, internal fights. So there's something for me that the pragmatism on let's just do it. Let's just find a way instead of, being so strict and siloed. That has somehow become a way of working together. I think that is quite unique, and that's definitely something that German cities could learn from. Breaking down the silos and be a little more relaxed and less strict on certain design parameters or certain government.
Less focus on the process, more on the outcome.
Yes.
And speaking about the outcome, and this is also what you mentioned in the beginning, cities are critical infrastructure. Cities are an investment case. This is also something I think which would be interesting to have your opinion on, because often it is seen that investments in city infrastructure is kind of like lost money, because it's actually sunk costs. Yeah. But somehow, obviously, infrastructure needs to be maintained. But you are actually making the case that there is economic outcomes, there is a business interest behind it, there is an investment case, and this investment case is not contradictory, but actually goes hand in hand with our goal to achieve livable cities. And this is something I think in a German discussion, we do not reflect on it the same way.
No, I would say there's a big shift in this mindset. So going from sort of the old way of working in cities, where you have the municipal people sitting, controlling the city and the regulation, and you would have the private capital being, eager to just get to make a buck out of an investment. We see a movement from both sides. So this, when I talk about co-responsibility, that is different from cooperation. Co-responsibility is that actually that we see both parties coming together, solving the problems of the cities in a more joint venture mindset way. And I think that is something that has changed. And of course, that's not for all institutional investors. I mean, you need a certain size, you need a certain leverage in order to do that, and also trust. So you cannot just be a small developer doing that. But of course, that mindset, that is part of the new sort of understanding of who will be the key players in solving the problems of the city. And let me come back to sort of investment case, because we are consultancy, and of course we are not investing in sort of assets, but we are supporting the private capital, but also the cities in what design matters. How should we actually design this so it has long-term value? And that, I think, is important, that the housing crisis of Europe, less affordability, that let's hope that this will be solved. That's not up to us. We can support the idea, but it will not be us who will solve that. But we can, of course, point to certain design levers in order to succeed in this way. But I see, if we are in a situation where affordable housing will become a major asset class in urban areas, that's actually going to be a game changer for European cities. Because right now, when you look out the window here from this beautiful office, every 4 out of 10 people you see in that street, they will not be here in 15 years' time. They will not afford to be in the city. So it will be a different Copenhagen in the future if we are not taking care of the affordability issue as it is. And for me, as a consultant, I see we need to help, how to densify Copenhagen in a very smart way without losing livability, but adding the right buildings and converting offices into housing, but also securing the infrastructure around, that we keep the possibility of creating the right placemaking, soft mobility, green and blue infrastructure being close to people. And that's what really matters in order to have both levers working together.
Yeah, but then if we speak about this co-responsibility of business and politics, of institutional investors and municipalities, we speak about livability, we speak about affordability, we speak about economic competitiveness, attracting talent, competing with other major European and global cities. We speak about, obviously, environmental issues, adaptation to climate change, specifically for a coastal city like Copenhagen, obviously a huge point. How do we still converge the ideas of all these aspects we need to look into and still making an investment case out of it? I think this is where in German urban planning discussions we lack a bit of fantasy, because affordability equals cheap and ugly housing nobody wants to live in. I think the concept is different in Denmark and Copenhagen. But how do we bring all of this together? Because we need to somehow work with interests and external factors that are tearing at opposing ends of a square.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. The problems we see ahead of us, they are just in mind of mindful of the climate crisis, but also in terms of sea level rises, cloudburst, everything will be a changed city in a way, and I think climate adaptation needs to be investable. It needs to become an asset class, or at least combined with housing. It needs to be sort of looking at neighborhoods as a whole, and not only looking at the buildings and bricks and mortar as an asset class. For me, how do we calculate the value added related to climate adaptation? You need to calculate in a different way. And of course, that mindset needs to shift on what does that equation actually look like. We know from looking back what did take place in Copenhagen, and here we have seen that Copenhagen has grown in GDP 1 annual percent compared to almost 40 non-resilient European cities. So there's actually a lot to gain here in terms of GDP value. So for me, we can learn from Copenhagen that prosperity is made of this livability, but how do we do the next leap forward where climate adaptation will become part of that, as today it's actually not?
Yeah. And do you actually see from the Copenhagen experience over the last years, and one of the partners behind the Copenhagen Way is Urban Partners,
Yes.
that institutional investors are actually more and more ready to go that way and to actually invest in both competitiveness and livability? They see it as a whole.
Yes.
Is this starting to begin?
Yeah, it is. And Urban Partners are a very, very good example of, both, I've followed their work also, how they need to transform, going from bricks and mortar, but actually expanding an investment portfolio of actually looking at the city as a whole, or neighborhoods as an asset class. And I think for us, we have done together with Kobe and other good partners, we have done the North Harbor Master Plan. And we can also see how that area in Aarhusgade neighborhood, how that has actually become a showcase. You can go out and you can actually see the result of a whole area where all these layers are working together. So actually creating proof points and talking about the value of that is actually important for the investors to demonstrate that this is not just fantasy. It's actually happening. And I just received an email last night that we are again being awarded in Madrid for this master plan, as one of the best international master plans in Europe. So I would just recommend that we start showcasing and highlighting the successes, not only in Copenhagen, but all the cities that where we see this transformation happening.
Yeah, I'll come back to that point in a minute, but in the meantime, we have a question from the audience.
Yes.
In terms of sustainable urban development, where do you see Copenhagen in 10 to 15 years? And what will be the biggest challenges in the future?
Yeah. We have sea level rise, climate adaptation as a whole. I would say that's one big thing. And of course, the affordability and the housing issue. We want to densify less than creating urban sprawl. We are seeing a lot of issues there. And I do think that exactly sustainability in the building, in the industry, the building industry as a sector, we can do a lot of transformation here. So it is about how can we build on top of the existing buildings we have, how to transform the dead office spaces into housing, how to densify between plots you will find in the city. So for me, it's also about letting loose of the regulation on zoning and planning, to be a little more pragmatic on the local level, in order to succeed and find how to not expand the city with higher footprint.
It has always been the easiest in the past.
Easiest and also the cheapest way in a way. So we need regulations say land is pricey, but
city limits.
That would be something I foresee, that this will actually take place. So we will see a better city in 10 years' time, with keeping the people in the city that needs to be here. So it's not only the rich and all the expats, it's actually all of us that can live in the city.
Yeah, and maybe last point in our discussion for today, cities do not act in isolation. Copenhagen as well, and obviously with the Fehmarnbelt connection soon to be a reality, the corridor Hamburg-Copenhagen via the Öresund further to Malmö and Stockholm is actually a reality to come. And looking at networks of cities working together, also German cities and Danish cities, Copenhagen. What would you say is the case for German cities looking at Copenhagen, looking at the Copenhagen Way, and potentially looking for inspiration in the Copenhagen Way for their own urban development?
I'm looking so much forward to the Femern connection. You know, we are very soon to become very close neighbors. And I think there's a huge, that will, per se create a lot of, the proximity to our two cities. That will be very important to that transformation. I think the more sort of pragmatic way of thinking, I think there's a way going forward. We have, it's also a cultural project in a way, how to create inspiration. We have just translated the Copenhagen Way into German. So it will also be, it's also a language thing. So of course we need to be able to share these ideas on all levels, both municipal levels, but also between organizations, in comparable organizations. I do think there's so many easy wins in this because we have access to a lot of very innovative companies in both regions. I do foresee that there will be a very strong exchange also on the private side that could be part of the future of connecting Hamburg with Copenhagen and the further Y region, as we call that innovation corridor.
Yeah, and speaking about the low-hanging fruits or the easy wins, where do you see the obvious untapped opportunities for German cities and for this German-Danish exchange on the learnings from the Copenhagen Way?
I think that some of the challenges we see in German cities is also the ones that we have. It is cloudburst strategies, easy win. Create a cloudburst plan for all cities where you put livability on top and actually handling the rainwater in a clever way. We see a lot on housing, the mindset that German cities has on housing, that we don't want to lose that. That's also an easy conversation. I think that we need to maybe add a little more placemaking in the German cities to cluster the different districts together in the right way. I also see that, of course, the mobility part, how soft mobility, and you have the whole auto industry in Germany, and that transformation led by the big automotive industry, how that will also be an area where we will see cities and the industry coming together with new solutions for the citizens.
Yeah. Signe, thank you so much for sharing these insights. And we had one remark also from one of our participants that it is indeed very much about mindset.
Yes, no, that's true.
And Danish mindset and German mindset is apparently slightly different. But there's also something we can learn from that, from the pragmatism. That also is kind of like one of the key elements potentially of the Copenhagen Way. But there is a lot of opportunities for stronger collaboration. And thank you so much for sharing these insights. Thank you also so much for, together with the partners, urban partners and BLOXHUB, going out to Germany and sharing this spirit and sharing this transformation story of Copenhagen. Also, we as a German-Danish Chamber of Commerce, we are happy to assist German delegations visiting Copenhagen, visiting Denmark, seeking for inspiration on the Copenhagen Way. This is also actually happening on a weekly basis, I would say. So a lot to do in a German-Danish context on sustainable and economic competitive cities. Thank you so much, Signe, for the conversation today. And thank you also to our participants for sharing your morning with us. We hope that you found our exchange interesting and productive. I also want you to invite to our next Coffee With, which is actually happening relatively soon, end of next week on May 8. Same time, 8:30, and we are going northwest. We will be speaking on doing business in Greenland with the CEO of Grønland Erhverv, Christian Kelsen. Very much looking forward having you with us also on that occasion. And other than that, we wish you a great and productive day. Thank you very much.